Hi guys, it's Penelope in London. I thought I'd do a little slideshow and address a few little things. So this is on my screen now. You can see a sense of self-worth is necessary for us to protect ourselves. So often when we've come from trauma, we've not been taught that we are worthy. And as a result of that, we've got very little self-worth. And this can happen to people that have not had childhood trauma. It can happen later in life as well. And the feelings of a sense of self-worth being, depleted and not feeling that we are worthy. So it's really important to understand that a sense of our own self-worth and self-love is really important for us to protect ourselves. So this would be almost that if you imagine that you have your inner child, and not everybody's done this work with the inner child, but what you would do is imagine yourself as a child, and it doesn't matter what age that would be, and whatever age you go to would be the right one for you at this point in time, and that you begin to have a bond with that child. So what you would do is, if you see your inner child right now, maybe you're in a, if you can imagine a forest with beautiful trees and a bench and a lake in the distance with some little deer off in the distance, and you can, as you're sitting on the bench, you can see a little child walking up to you from the distance. And as he or she gets closer and closer, you notice that it's you as a child. And when that child comes up to you, what you would do is you would welcome that child and you would ask it, do you want to sit by me? And if the child says no, then you're okay with that. You don't get frustrated. And then you look at the child and see the look on the child's face and you acknowledge that, what is that inner child feeling? And then you ask the child, can you hold the child's hand? So what you're going to do is build up a warmth towards that child, so the child then feels safe enough to sit with you and be with you. And then you can bring that child into your heart and let the child know that you're going to take care of it and love that child forever, and you're going to keep it safe. There's a lot more around that, but that's one way that you can begin that process of the inner child. And it's very difficult for some people that have been through a lot of abuse to warm or acknowledge that they have an inner child that needs love and reparenting. So often society basically teaches us that the only people that are going to be parenting us are our own parents or whoever did parent us. And if there was unkindness there or deception, or we were treated in an unworthy way, then we basically shut down and our ego splits. So that's deep work, understanding what an ego split is. It's a self-sense protection. So it doesn't mean the ego absolutely splits, because the brain is all one, as the brain is not separate from us. It's all one with our body. So, that's a little thing you can do there. The next thing is to understand the trauma responses, which people have as adults as well. A lot of people will be going through the trauma responses now because of what's happened with lockdown. So again, it's not just to do with childhood, but everybody generally can go back to some event in childhood where they struggled, whether it was at school or in a situation that needs healing. So we can have the fight response. So I will tell you, there's the healthy fight, flight, freeze, fawn. And then what we've got is I wouldn't say it's unhealthy. It's just it's a response that's no longer working for us. So the fight response could be an anger outburst. It could be where we feel that we want to be controlling in order to feel safe, where we might bully somebody. That can come from childhood, but that would be in the fight response here. And then the narcissistic response as well within the fight response doesn't mean somebody is a narcissist. It just means that something comes out at that moment when we get triggered that may appear to be narcissistic, and also explosive behavior, just exploding on somebody. And then we have the flight, which is the workaholic. It can be the overthinker, anxiety, panic, and OCD. So again, none of these things are bad in themselves. Some people overthink because that's the way they're made, and sometimes overthinking, is taken. People might have been told as a child, "Oh, you think too much," and that is not always the truth. So we want to look at these words carefully and not apply things to ourselves that are not labels. We don't want to label ourselves. What we're trying to do here is overcome trauma and heal. So this is not about labeling ourselves with things that we haven't got. So we've probably all at some point had anxiety. We've all had a panic at some point. OCD, a lot of people have that. It's a response to feeling safe. So, simple things like checking the door shut, 10 times before you go to bed, or looking under the bed, or checking things are off. And many people do this. There can also be a difficulty sitting still, and an idea of perfectionism, which again would have been taught generally in childhood. Like if your parents, possibly where there was abuse or that you were over adulated, you can have this idea that you've got to be perfect in the world and perform perfectly to be loved. And this comes from not being loved enough, and trying to sort of get into a belief in our head that we're perfect, which can be very demoralizing for us. The freeze response is where we can have difficulty with decisions. We can feel stuck, we can have disassociation, we can isolate, and we can feel numb. And then the fawn response is where we're people pleaser. It's linked in with codependency as well. But again, don't label yourself. Just think about, because all of these things work together. In healthy, we would go fight, flight, freeze, fawn, to protect ourselves. So fawn is people pleaser, where we have a lack of identity, no boundaries. And it's very rare that somebody's got zero boundaries, but we know, that we do need some, so to protect ourselves. And then we can feel overwhelmed and also codependent. And then this is really useful here to understand that when we're going through really difficult times, or we're responding maybe in what we would consider inappropriate ways, that when we feel confused or upset, by or obsessed by another or whatever, we could be obsessed by something, like I'm sure a lot of people are obsessed about their health at the moment, as an example. That is our unconscious trying to work towards individuation and consciousness. So individuation, in the terms of Carl Gustav Jung, is actually to do with becoming whole. So individuation can sound different to, individuation could sound to people like it's moving away from people. And individuation, in one way, Jung would say that we move away from our families. We're born and then we move away and we become independent and we become whole. But that's just not the only way to look at this. And if I read this again in all one sentence, when we feel confused or upset by or obsessed by another or whatever, that is our unconscious trying to work towards individuation and consciousness. And consciousness is where we keep waking up. We're constantly in a state of awakening to ourselves and situations. Enlightenment is never ending. I don't like that idea as in spirituality that's the ultimate, because as a human being, we're going to be learning something new every day and get aha moments all the way through our lives. And then this is quite nice. Somebody posted this and I liked it. It says, decide what kind of life you really want, and then say no to everything that isn't that. And we don't have to take that literally, but you can if you want. It's quite a useful idea, because it could prevent us then from getting into situations and scenarios that are actually a no to us. And then here is a bit on self-love. And this is by a gentleman called Sam Vaknin, who is a professor on personality disorders and such like. And I listen to a lot of his stuff on YouTube. You can go to see here. So let's read this. So self-love is a healthy self-regard and pursuit of one's happiness and favorable outcomes. And it rests on four pillars. Number one is self-awareness, an intimate, detailed, and compassionate knowledge of oneself. And he says a SWOT, so analysis. He says strengths, weaknesses, others' roles, and threats. And then number two, self-acceptance, the unconditional embrace of one's core identity, personality, character, temperament, relationships, experiences, and life circumstances. So then we have self-trust, which is the conviction that one has one's best interests in mind in watching one's back and has agency and autonomy. One is not controlled by or dependent upon others in a compromising fashion. And then number four is self-efficacy. the belief gleaned from and honed by experience that one is capable of setting rational, realistic, and beneficial goals, and possesses the wherewithal to realize outcomes commensurate with one's aims. So self-love is the only reliable compass in life. Experience usually comes too late when its lessons can no longer be implemented because of older age, lost opportunities, and changed circumstances. It is also pretty useless. No two people or situations are the same. But self-love is a rock, a stable, reliable, immovable, and immutable guide, and the truest of loyal friends whose only concern in your welfare and your contentment. So, if we go back through this would be inner child work as well, that we have self-awareness for we're the parent to our inner child, the mother and the father to the inner child, self-awareness, self-acceptance, self-trust, self-efficacy. And this is what we really need to be doing for ourselves, because so many of us seek outside ourselves, and then we get into situations that are not great for us in so many ways. And this is the work of being human. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll catch you later. Thanks for watching.